Hey there, welcome. I'm so excited. Okay, this is the video tutorial for the beginner butterfly project. Here I have it started. I'm gonna demo on this side, but before we get there, I am going to do the demo on this practice sampler we have. But before we do that, I'm gonna talk real quick about what is in your kit. If you didn't buy the kit and instead you got the just the digital pattern, you can use whatever supplies you have at home. If you have any questions, feel free to email me about that or anything at any time. Okay, so if you got the kit, you are going to have these colors of DMC full skeins. So two of them are variegated, you'll notice, which is kind of fun, and the rest are not. And then you'll have a small length of color. See, it's like this light blue color. Let me pull it out because I'm going to demo something with it. I just forgot. I'll get there in a sec. You will have the printed fabric. So here is the sample practice sampler. That's what I'm calling it. And here's the actual design. If you are having a hard time seeing these, make sure you have like good lighting. In natural light and bright light, you should be able to see the lines pretty well. You can see the fabric. It's going to get hooped up in your hoop that is included. You will also have some needles. So what I like to recommend people do with their hoop, you can see there is a way to tighten the hoop pretty tight here with a magic tool called a screwdriver. There it is. Sometimes the words just don't come right away. All right, so your hoop has two parts, and you're going to make a little sandwich with your fabric like so, and pop on your hoop, tighten it. I'm going to demo real quick before then. There's a couple things you can do to make this better for you for stitching, because what's really important is to have very tight tension on your fabric once it's in the hoop. So you can kind of hear it like it doesn't actually sound like a drum, but we call it drum tight, right? So if you're trying to stitch and your fabric's all floppy like this, when you stitch, you could be kind of attaching bits of fabric to itself, and you're going to end up with these creases, and they're not the kind that you can get out with ironing. So having that really tight tension on your fabric before you start stitching is going to help you a lot. So a couple things you can do. If you want, this might be an easy solution. You can put a second layer of fabric like under the fabric that you're stitching on and hoop those up together, or even a third layer, depending on how thick you like it, how tight you want it. Another thing you can do is you can bind your hoop. So I use strips of fabric like this to bind, and real simple. You're literally just doing this, and it does not need to look pretty, clearly. So you would go all the way around your hoop, right? And what that's going to do is you're making this padded here. You're giving it some squish, some something to press the other hoop into. You're making it thicker, which is also going to help. So I'd like to do that. One thing I've started doing is after I add that binding, I'll put tape on top of it. And I just started doing that. I have this like fancy thimble tape that you can use. Let's see. Looks like this, and it is hot pink, which is fun. So you can see here, that's what I did for this inner hoop. I did the fabric, and then I just did the same thing with the tape over it. This fabric, this tape does not stick to me, but it sticks to itself. I think you could probably pick up like, like Ace bandage or some kind of like first aid tape would probably work just as well. They also make a tape that's like a hoop binding tape, but I feel like, again, it's going to be the same thing. So what that does is it adds more grip. So this fabric isn't going anywhere. So those are some options. I do like that just the hoop binding is a great place to start. If you have like an old pillowcase or something you don't use anymore, you can just kind of get some strips from that Okay, so once you have your hoop, how you want your hoop, bound, unbound, whatever, whoa, be sure when you get your hoop here, like so. So this is how I do it. So I like to tighten, and then I make kind of like a lap around, just pulling, pull, 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 pull. I'm gonna go all the way around, and then when I get back to the top, I'm gonna tighten again. I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna go around again. So it is very tight, very, very tight, okay? And again, this is without using a screwdriver, without having the fabric bound, without having the tape. So you can imagine you can get even tighter with all of those things. Pay attention so when you are doing that pulling, you can see I pulled this side of the project a bit too far. Well, it might not be too far. It's probably still doable, but obviously we have that inner hoop that's going to block you from stitching anything at the far edges of the design. So try to keep your design centered when possible. Okay, whew, I feel like I'm talking like super fast. I want to give you all a lot of good information, especially as beginners, but I also don't want to, I could just talk and talk forever. Okay, so we have some needles, so I'll tell you a couple things about needles. Here I have this ready for filming. I don't usually do this. I just have this set up so hopefully it'll be easy for me to grab what I need when I need it. I have a very large selection of random needles on here. This itty bitty teeny tiny one, this is probably a 9 or a 10. We are not using something like that today. And then we have something like a little bit more comfortable to thread. You can probably get 2, 3 strands, maybe even 6 strands in there. The point I'm trying to make eventually is a lot of these, I don't know what size they are, right? There are some differences between different brands. So usually I recommend if you want to get some more needles, get like a variety pack. Usually the 3 9s are pretty good. You're going to have 9s, which are these really itty bitty tinier ones. And then 3s are going to be bigger like this. You're definitely going to be able to get 6 strands through. And there will be some in-betweens as well. Okay. Again, if you have any questions about these things, send me an email. Okay. So you have your thread and you want to get going. So what you're going to do is the color code is down here on your skein or skein, depending on a lot of things. So you can pull from this side. If you pull from this side, you're going to have a much easier time. So go ahead and pull out how much you need. Some people say to measure from like the tip of your finger to your elbow. I go a little longer than that. So let me go ahead and snip this. And you can use any scissors. I do have the option to do the add-on of the stork scissors, not required. Any scissors will really do. It's just if you have little bits and little things you want to trim and kind of need the smaller scissors. Whoops. These can help with something like that, right? Rather than like some giant paper cutting scissors. Okay, here it is. Okay, so this is what I just cut. So if you cut a very super long length of thread, the problems you might encounter would be tangling of that thread. And the more often you bring that thread through your work, right? Because when you pierce with your needle, this thread has to go through that little hole, right? So over time, depending on how many stitches you're doing and how small they are, by the time you get to this end of the thread over here, it may have gone up and down through your fabric, 20, 30 times. So a very, very long piece, probably not ideal. A very, very short piece will reduce that, but you're going to be, having to cut more pieces of thread, right? The thread won't last as long. So all this thread is 6 stranded. So if you fray the ends like so. You can see the 6 strands. So when we start, we're actually going to start with this color, and we want 2 strands. So there's 2 ways to do that. The safe way is to pull out 1 strand at a time. So here's my 1 strand, and I'm just going to kind of gently hold here and pull like so. Boop. And then I would pull another one. You can see this gets all tangled, so you want to be careful. So the not as safe way is to just pull the 2 at the same time. That would look something like this. That's how I like to do that. I kind of hold the Y and pull. Ta-da! So I have 2 here. I have 3 strands left here. I have the 1 strand here to equal 6 strands total. It's like I'm a magician. What else can I tell you before we start? I will show you this really quick. Like I said, you have needles included in your kit. If you're having a hard time threading your needle, and let's say you need to use 6 strands for something, you can always get a double length of your thread and just 3 strands, like I swear I have here. If it ever comes in focus, you may have to take my word for it. There they are. We take these 3 strands and we're gonna put them through this needle. Maybe. Usually yeah, let's just do it right, huh? All right, so I do the lick, don't judge, and then the snip. So I have a nice sharp point. And then I can get those 3 strands in here, like so. And I'm gonna pull, and then when I stitch, I would, match these 2 tails together. I could tie a knot here, like so. And then when I stitch, I'm stitching with that doubled over length, which is now 6 strands. Yeah? So that's kind of a little cheat you can do if you're having a hard time with your needles and getting the thread through. It's hand embroidery. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be relaxing. It's not supposed to be frustrating. So anytime you need to make alterations, substitutions, please do. Again, make sure you have good lighting. Make sure you have a comfortable place to sit. Make sure, I don't know, take some deep breaths. Have fun. There's one other thing I'll say is, yes, I sometimes start with a knot on the back tail end of my thread. You can see the back of my work here. It's usually just the first bit of stitching I kind of need to worry about an anchor. After that, you can just start another length of thread by kind of weaving your needle into the back side of your hoop, something like that, and then starting to stitch. Usually I think I do a knot. Some people like to make the back side of their work as clean and neat as the front. I don't. I am a work in progress, so I don't think anyone's going to come around and, look up my skirt, so to say. Okay, why don't we get started? Yay. All right, I'm sitting down and took some deep breaths. I haven't filmed a video tutorial in a long time. We moved and we've been really busy, and so I'm just like, it's good to be sitting and filming again. All right, so we're gonna start with backstitch up here. Oh, let me just tell you why we're doing this anyways. So I like to have like a, like if you're an artist, you have like a scratch pad, right? Where you can test out ideas and whatnot. So I like to have something similar when I do embroidery, like a spare piece of fabric that's hooped up and ready for me to just practice on, right? Like if I want to, let's try this stitch, or I don't remember how to do that stitch. I'm not actually doing the stitch on my design, but I'm doing it on that scratch fabric where I can practice, and also I can come back to it and refer to it in the future when I'm like, oh, what was that stitch called? Or what was that thing I did the other day? It looked cool, So this is not required. This is kind of a fun bonus thing to do, or not do. And there's opportunities here to try different numbers of strands and different colors. Well, at least to start, I'm going to try to stick to the same colors that we use for the main project, the butterfly, but you can practice however you like. So I am going to start with backstitch. I have a little key here I made for myself that probably doesn't make sense to anyone but me, but I'm going to try to stick with the order in which it is suggested in the instructions to do the project, which hopefully hopefully it makes sense. We're going to find out, right? Okay, we're going to start up here with backstitch. So I have 2 lines I'm going to practice on. The top line I'm going to use 2 strands, and then I'm going to use 6 strands on the next one. So let's see, here's the start of my line. You can see it right here. Da, da, da. So let's see, I'm trying to think if I should zoom in because we move around a lot. Why not? Okay, I just had to remember that I did that and not start stitching off screen. Okay, backstitch. So we're going to start a stitch length away from the start of our line, and we're going to move this way. So what is a stitch length away? What a great question. There's a lot of different stitch lengths you could do. Just pick something. I don't know. Let's see. I don't have any measuring devices right here. Here's my thumb. This is actually kind of a big stitch length away, but we'll just start with this. So I am going back to the start of my line, like so, and then I pop up a stitch length away from there, and I'm going to go back down this same hole here. Now, because I made a little knot at the end, I know that there's going to be a little knot I need to avoid when I go down this hole, which is an advertisement for knot. Oh, that was a twisty knot I just made. Sometimes those happen, like, sometimes they come out really easily, sometimes they don't. You have to cut them out. Hopefully we'll have some, like, hard ones so I can show you what that looks like. But yes, if you're stitching and you get knots, that's normal. Well, for me. All right, come up a stitch length away, and then go down the same hole. If I do not go down the same hole, what's going to happen is I am not going to have a solid line. Here's another one of those little, this is a yard length of thread, which is why I'm getting so many tangles, to illustrate that point I made earlier about having too long of a piece of thread. So yes, make sure you are going down the same hole that the previous stitch came up. And if you need glasses to do this, then get them. Go get your glasses. I need glasses, but I don't have them. All right, so I'm going to just go down. That's it. So if you look at the main project here, you can see this is that back stitch we just did, right? So you can keep your back stitches the same length all over your project. You can have them be smaller, you can have them be longer. The longer they are, the fewer you're gonna have to do, but the harder time you'll have, like if you're doing like a sharp turn, that whole, straight line situation. So find what works for you. I'm gonna trim this so it's out of my way, and then we'll go ahead and we'll move to using 6 strands. Ugh, it's a yard. Hopefully we don't get too many knots. Let's see. So once again, come up to the right, stitch length away. So this time I'm going to make my stitches shorter just so you can see how that looks. Oops, I think I'm coming down on my on the padding. This hoop I like over padded, so the inner hoop is so fat. Okay, So another thing you'll want to think about with all of your stitches is tension. I don't know if you've ever done any knitting or crocheting, but whew, that's a tough one too with tension. Like if you're all tense and all of a sudden your stitches are getting tighter and tighter as you go on. Oh, I have a cat at my door and is not happy that he is locked out. Stitch length away. And again, what is that stitch length? Well, you tell me. What do you want it to be? Here we're going to fit more stitches than above. What did we do above? We did 1, 2, we did 5. Oops. I got tangled on something. So you can see when I'm pulling the excess, as I get closer and closer, I just am being pretty gentle at the end there, right? We don't want our stitch tension to be tighter than the tension on the fabric. Sorry, I'm stitching using my my table clamp here, and it has all these fun little widgets to tighten itself with, but they're really easy to get stuck on. Nice and relaxed. And nice and relaxed down. And down. Next we're going to go ahead and do split stitch, although I'm actually going to do back split stitch because I think it is way easier. So very similar to what we just did. I'm going to start a stitch length away from the start of my line. I'm using 2 strands of thread for this. So I come up here and back here. And then my next stitch is going to split that stitch. And I'm going to do that by coming up half a stitch length away. And then I am going to go back and split the previous stitch on my way down. Like so. Did I split it? I honestly can't tell. I think I split it, but like off center. Okay, half a stitch away and then back down. The thing I like, oh my god, there's a cat like scratching at my door. Okay, the thing I like about doing back split stitch is you can use the point of your needle, this lovely tool we have here, and you can really kind of get in here and see where I want to go down, like so. And again. Like so. So this makes a line. We're going to use it to outline some stuff. It looks different than back stitch. Back stitch, you can really see the stitches. You can also use this stitch to fill. We're not going to do that today, though. Okay, come on now. So if you're curious, or if you want to instead do regular split stitch, I'll do it on top. You're going to go up at the start of the line and down. And then you're going to actually come up through the center of this stitch while splitting it. So how I split it, it's not easy. And then we go down. And again, come up and split from below and down. I think it's much harder. And for our purposes, we're just going to cover our split stitches anyways. And even if we weren't going to cover them, I'm not really sure if there's a visible difference between the two. And I guess that's kind of why it's interesting to do these little practice hoops, right? Because you can practice both ways and you can see, and you can even come in with a pencil or whatever and write on here what you did. Here I did back split, here I did regular split. And you can look and see if there's a difference. And if it's enough of a difference that you will, care to do it one way or the other in the future. I think I have a knot happening. Oh, I do. I could feel it. So here's a little knot that's on the back. And it looks like it's a twisty knot. I'm sure there's like an actual name for these. I don't know. But they come from your thread twisting on itself. Sometimes you can encourage them to undo themselves, but it doesn't look like today is one of those days. Oops, I just flat out lost it. Let's see, sometimes they want to be pulled up, sometimes they want to be pulled down, and sometimes they just are not interested at all. Sometimes if you just yank them really hard, oh, that worked. Sometimes that works. Sometimes you end up just breaking your thread. If you are unable to remove your knot, you can just cut your thread and start anew. Okay, I'm going to stop there with this guy. We'll do our satin and then the padded satin. So for satin stitch, you're basically just doing a bunch of straight stitches to fill a shape. I'm going to go lengthwise on this one because it'll be faster. I think maybe, well, we'll see what happens. So whenever I'm filling a shape with satin stitch, I like to start with the center stitch. That will help me kind of have like a baseline for what my stitch direction is going to be. And I'm just going to keep it lengthwise here. So I start with the center and then I do one side and then the other side. And sometimes I don't. Sometimes I bounce back and forth. Depends on how distracted I am or how much attention I'm paying. So satin stitch is tricky. Basically, we're making a bunch of parallel stitches that are the same distance apart from each other, which is not easy unless you're like a machine, like literally like a sewing machine. This is another one where tension is like super important. So don't pull, don't pull too tight, but you also don't want to be too loose, right? It's like the Three Bears. You want it to be just right. All right, and as I get more over here, make sure I'm covering my guidelines. So I'm just trying to see what's going on here. I can see I have some weirdness here where it's not. I can't tell if I added an extra stitch or if I have a little gap in there somewhere, but I'm going to just keep going for now. This, it's actually funny. My kiddo was just looking at some of my videos on YouTube and he was like, "What's Satan stitch?" I was like, yeah, well, some people might agree with you there. It can be just know that it's never going to be perfect. That helps me. So I don't know if you notice, it looks like there's like a hole right here. So I'm gonna, yeah, see how when I push from below, there's it. It's almost like it's got a part in it, you know, like in your hair. You can tell where. Need to add another little stitch here. Something like that. Oh, I don't know if that helps. I'm gonna add another stitch. That's usually what I end up doing is like, oh, I need another stitch here. I need another stitch here. And the next thing I know, I've got multiple layers of satin stitch on top of each other. Okay, something like that. Like I would stop there. You can see like on my sample projects. Okay, I did a really good job on those ones. So let's not look at those. I feel like, well, those don't look bad either, huh? So technically the shapes should all be the same shape. I didn't finish this one, obviously. But you can see even between these two, they're not perfect, right? They're not identical. They're okay. And I'm okay with okay. I do find that if you outline the stitch first, which is what we're going to do now, it can help. So we are going to outline this little shape here with our split stitch. So that's why we're doing these together. Teller is singing me a song because he wants in. He would just come in and probably run off with stuff. He would probably start stealing stuff from me. My thread. He would knock over the camera. Instead, we're just going to have his little song in the background. So I'm doing that split stitch all around. So when we get over here, it's a little tricky, right? Because it's quite a change in direction. So what you want to do is make sure, like this next stitch is going to be real tiny. So I can come back and I'm going to split through this stitch and make sure it's where I want it. Again, these stitches are going to get covered, so I don't need to worry too much about them. But they are creating the outline of where our satin stitch is going to be. So we use this padded satin for the butterfly body. Just gives it, I don't know, a more distinct edge. It gives it a little bit more volume. So we're going to outline it. If you want, you can also add some stitches inside to give more padding. So if you want to do, maybe I'll just do like a row of something. Let's see. Let's see, what am I going to do? I'll just do some sloppy random stitches in here just to fill with something. Just so there's a little something under there. Usually I do chain stitch, but we haven't talked about chain stitch yet, so. Okay, we'll pretend we just padded. Alright, so then I'm going to just do what I did up here. So, but now we're just going over outlines. Like so. So I'm going to keep doing this one. I'm going to finish it. In this other space, if you want, you can try, you could do a different stitch direction for the satin. So instead of going the length, you could go, you know, like a horizontal stitch direction like that. You could try a different number of strands. You could try 6 strands. You could try 1 strand. You could pad with something else, or you could just skip it. Looks like, speaking of skipping, looks like I could use stitch somewhere right here. See the problem with doing it like I just did? It fills in that gap, but then over here that stitch is now overlapping other stitches. So did I really fix anything, or did I just create another problem? That's debatable. All right, I'm at a thread. So I was playing thread chicken, as they call it. So look at this magic. I have another strand ready to go. That's all you need to worry about. There's nothing too fancy. Hopefully you can see the back of your hoop and like weave the tail in. If you have a tail left over. Unfortunately, it's kind of hard for me to show that on this because my hoop is very much attached to a table vise that will not allow me to flip it upside down. But I will try to recreate that in a second here. All right. One thing you probably noticed, these were the original, like originally this is the same shape, right? So because I outlined it before covering it, the shape has changed for better or worse. It is now thicker. Oops. Try to just add one more little stitch on this side. And I kind of want to fix whatever's going on this side. There's like a situation here. So I'm gonna have this lay along here somewhere. Okay, sort of, kind of looks a little better. All right, so there's my padded versus my satin. So let's pretend we are on the opposite side of the fabric right now, and I am done with this thread. What am I going to do with it? So again, pretending we're on the other side of the fabric, I can just weave this under the back side of some other stitches, like so. And then give it a little snip and be done. Okay, next we're doing chain stitch, and we're gonna use that yellow again, which I'm already tired of, but I think we're almost done with it. So similarly, let's say you're starting a new strand. You can do the same thing on the back side. Is weave. Don't weave too far. Weave through some previous stitches, like so. Well, that went poorly. I got snagged on something. Whoop. Okay. Oh my word. Okay. Trying that again. So weave once and twice, like so. And then, see, now it's nice and snug on the back side of my stitches. And then I can pop through and do my actual stitching. I don't actually want this here, so what am I gonna do? I'm gonna just cut it out for now. Okay. Alright, chain stitch. So I'm going to use 6 strands, come up at the beginning of my line, and I'm going to go back down the same hole, and I'm going to leave this lovely loop here, and I'm going to come up a stitch length away on this line, something like there, and I will pull my needle and pull this loop. And that looks good. All right. So again, I kind of do the thing where I'm pulling, and then as I get closer to the edge of where I'm going to pull, I kind of slow down because it's hard to undo tension. All right. So I'm going back down that hole I just came up, and I'm going to leave this loop over here. Okay, I did something naughty, but let's see if we can pretend I didn't. When I went back down, I split through. You can see there some of these. Yeah, I'm not used to. Oh, man, the cat. Okay, I'm pulling. All right, that's cool. It's like it never happened. Back down the same hole, holding that loop, and then popping up, pull. And I'm trying to keep, you know, the stitches the same length, the tension the same. Try not to get distracted by the cat. So this is the stabbing method. I am a stabber, not a sewer. So people that are able to do the sew method, they, instead of doing it in kind of 2 stabs, they're able to just do it in one lovely smooth sewing motion. And I just kind of am not great at creating consistently spaced or consistent tension when I do that. So I just go with what works for me. I don't know what happened. My chain stitch got kind of wobbly there. It may have been a straight line at one point. Alright, and to finish, you can just create a little anchor by going right back down like so. Bloop. Ta-da! And the one thing I did on the actual project, I'll show you real quick. I'll go in the opposite direction as I do kind of this, I call it a taper. I don't know. I just made that up, but so I'm going to go in the opposite direction, do a couple stitches. Here's a stitch and then another stitch. And then as I get close to the end of my line, I switch from doing chain stitches to split stitches. So instead of just going down with a tiny little anchor stitch, I go down a little further away. Actually, let's go even a little bit further. And I keep the stitch kind of loose because I'm actually going to split it. So we'll do a back split because, you know, that's easier. So I split into this. So then it kind of like tapers down instead of like a short stop like that. So here you can see on the project I did it so it kind of fades away. You don't have to do that. I just do it for fun sometimes. So, all right, next we're gonna do this stem stitch rows, but first we need to do stem stitch, right? So I'm gonna come up the edge of my line, go down a stitch length away. I'm going to hold my thread above the line. And I'm going to come up in between these 2 points on my line and then pull the slack. I'm going to kind of pull down, give a little tug. I'm going to do it again. So go down a stitch length away from where I just came up, which is going to look like a half stitch away from the previous stitch. And again, I'm going to hold my thread up and I'm going to pop up in between and pull. And again, down a stitch length away, holding my thread above, coming up in between, and pulling down. And again. So I'm actually going to do this again, but instead of holding the thread up, I'm going to hold it down. And so this would be possibly, you'd want to write a little note for yourself if you end up doing it both ways. Just write a little note, either, if you don't want to write on your fabric, I get it. Oops, that was horrible. You see I did not come up on the line. So what do? I just goofed, right? I came up not on my guideline at all, like noticeably so. I could just keep going and ignore it. If you don't want to ignore it, you take your thread off your needle, and you pull. See, we'd have to pull this stitch out from under here, and then it will pull. I'll just pull this stitch like so, and then we just keep going. So I'm going to have to rethread. So at this point, I may need to And see what happens to the end, the tail of your thread as you're stitching. It gets kind of frayed, so I'm going to give it the lick and the snip treatment. So now it looks easier, right, to get on this needle. Like so. And I will keep going. Alright. Down. And up, this time along that little blue line. We're pulling the slack. Okay, so like I was saying, you can write yourself little notes on your fabric. So once you're done, I'm changing subjects again. Once you're done with your row, you can just come down the end of that line like so. And then I'm going to do it again, but instead of keeping my thread above, I'm going to keep it below. So before I do that, I'll try to finish this thought. So if you want, you can print out the template of what I'm stitching on, and you can write yourself little notes like I did here, like, okay, we're going to use 3 strands here and 6 strands here, and I'm going to use this color here and this color there. If you don't want to actually write on your fabric, you can do something like that. All right, so here we go. We're going to do down, keeping that thread below before I come up. And again. So you can see now the twist that is created is going in the opposite direction. Yeah? And usually I don't know what it's going to look like until I start doing it. I know it would help to refer to my my sketch fabric, but usually I have to relearn the lesson every time I'm using stem stitch. What way do I go again? Neither is wrong. I believe one of these is technically called outline stitch, while the other is called stem stitch. But I don't have the mental storage to remember which is which. All right, and then down at the end. So I just call them both stem. I love them. All right, so we are going to use that stitch to make a rose. And we're going to start in the center, and we are going to spiral out. So we're going to come up at the teeny tiny center of this rose, like so. And I'm going to come down. It's so little because, yeah, it's just so little. So I'm going to come down on the line. Use your best judgment on that. I know it's super teeny tiny. And I'm going to come up in between these. Like here. And so for the rose, I am just going to keep this loop instead of saying below or above. It's just the outside is how my brain is thinking of it. As long as you're consistent, I think it's fine. Okay. Hopefully you can see what you're doing. But you know what? If you can't, that's okay too. At any time, if you want to use fewer strands of thread, you can do that. That will help you see a little bit better what you're doing. But with something like the stem stitch rose, I like to use the 6 strands. And I also like to really keep these stitches loose. And what that does, it gives like volume to our rose. So again, I talked about, pulling our tension and then, or I don't know what you call this, the loop, I guess. And as there's a little bit left, I'm just going really slow until I get the tension that I want, and I don't really know what I want. It's almost like I'll know it when I see it, and that was probably too tight. Whatever, let's try the next one. And you see this is a spiral, right? So you can You can totally stick with the guideline and just stop when it stops, or you can keep spiraling and adding more layers. Or if you hate stem stitch rows, you can skip it and do a woven wheel rows instead, or something else. And that is always the case. Anytime you're doing a stitch, if you are just not into it, you try it and you're like, I hate it, then don't do it. It's supposed to be fun, remember? I think I've had love-hate relationships with most stitches. I'll go through phases, like what I enjoy doing and what I don't enjoy doing. This reminds me of one of those little donuts, you know, the cruller? Is that what they're called? The French cruller donuts? Those are delicious. I may have to open the door for the cat. I think he'd be bored of meowing at me by now. And it'll actually be dinner soon for them, so they won't be distracted by dinner. It's nice. My new office has like an actual door that closes. My old office had like kind of like barn doors that like they were on a what would you call that? Like there wasn't a way to close them exactly because a cat could just stick its paw in between the doors and push them open. But luckily they haven't figured out how to have opposable thumbs, so I think I'm safe in here. So you can just go and go and go around and around and around as many times as you like. I am gonna say it's done. Uh-oh. There we go. You can see, I don't know if you heard that little pop, but the tail of my thread got twisted on itself, making this beginning of a knot. Alright, so I'm just going to go down gently and then be done with that. Let's see, what am I gonna do? Okay, time for the woven wheel rows. So I'm using 6 strands. Here's my little guideline. I'm gonna start with 5 straight stitches, starting at the edge, and they will all meet at the center. Teller is now in the room with me. Oh, and Biscuit's here. It's a full-on cat party. You may notice that I did the back stitching for the whipped back stitch when you weren't looking. I apologize. Feel free to do that at any time. And once we actually go whip it, I will demonstrate it. Whip it good. No, no, no. All right, crack that whip. Okay, here we are. So those are the 5 stitches. I'm going to come up near the center, but not at the center. And now I am going to weave over and under these 5 stitches. Okay, so I'm going to go over and then under this one. So over that one, under that one, like so, and I'm going to keep going. I find this stitch exceptionally difficult when you are using a clamp. Usually I do this faster by actually spinning the hoop rather than spinning my wrist and having to switch hands. I don't usually use a clamp when I'm just stitching. I bet I do for when I'm making videos so that you don't have to take like motion sickness medication while trying to watch me. All right, the cat is now in my sunlight, which I'm not super happy about. Oh no. Tell her. Come on, buddy. Ugh. Cats. Alright, so one thing you might be able to see me doing is I have my left hand underneath the hoop here, and I lift up my rows when I need to go under, because that helps me to weave underneath one of those spokes without piercing the fabric, because that's what we're doing here. We are not piercing the fabric. We are just weaving. Some people like to actually go backwards with their needle like this, so you can't stab with the end of your needle, but of course then you end up pushing your needle through with your fingertip, which can be less than pleasant. This is another one where tension is important. Don't want to pull too tight. And this is also one where if you snag your rows, it can be very tricky to fix it. And in fact, sometimes it cannot be fixed, which is very sad. So, I don't know, that seems pretty good. I'm just going to go down here to finish. And sometimes what I will do is then add a couple stitches if needed. So, like, I don't know if you can, might not be able to tell from there, but from my angle I can see like a tiny bit of the guideline right here. So I'm just going to pop up and put a stitch here to kind of hide the guideline, like so. And this got pulled in from the back. Okay. Ugh, tell her you're just kind of ruining the cinematic experience here, man. Oh gosh. All right, we're gonna move on to French knots up here. I'm gonna remove a cat. All right, French knots. So I am gonna come up on my little dot here, and I'm going to do a single wrap, like so. And I'm gonna put my needle down very close to where I just came up. Not the same spot, but pretty darn close. I'm gonna hold this needle. Right now the cats are fighting. This is going really well. Now they're all in here. It's a cat party for sure. Okay, pulling my thread lightly so that it touches that wrap I made. It's touching the surface of the fabric. And now I pull through from the bottom. And if you listen, you hear this little pop, and then you can pull through. Why is it so dark? Okay, let's keep trying. And like I said, this is my first time filming in our new place, so definitely still getting used to the logistics and the lighting. Can't really blame it all on the cat. All right, here's one loop. Wrap, I guess. Place my needle near where I came up and gently pull that wrap down to the surface of the fabric, and I'm gonna push down enough so I can pull from the bottom, pop it through. We have the afternoon light is starting to come through the window now, and so my camera's a little confused about the lighting situation. So I appreciate your patience with me. And here comes my kid. This is just, it's just life. I don't know what to tell you. Let's see, I think he's going to his room. Yeah. Some people do not like French knots and will never like French knots. If that is you, don't do them. Or just practice. I think doing this single wrap is really helpful. I'll show you what a double wrap looks like. So it's one and another. That's a double wrap. And what happens is I come down, same thing, but now it's harder to pull through. And you can see it does make a larger French knot with that double wrap. And then like a triple wrap, be 1, 2, 3. Place my needle down here where I came up, pulling that wrap near surface of the fabric and then pulling through. This is even harder to pull through and it makes an even bigger knot. Those are French knots. Alright, I'm going to do a couple more here in a sec, because now we're going to do our open woven wheel rows right here. Let's see, I did grab my yellow again. So you can fill this space with anything. You don't have to use French knots. If you want to do, well, if you want to skip it and just do another woven wheel rows and not have the center be open, you can do that. If you want to just do satin stitch in the center, you can do that. Right there. Oops. Somehow I just lost my thread. Okay. So I'm filling this centerpiece with French knots. Okay, I would like to do another one, but I just lost my thread and I want to keep us moving. So now I'm going to do the open woven wheel. So it's pretty much the same thing, except when we do these spokes, they obviously don't make it all the way to the center of my rows because there are French knots in the way. If the tail of my thread wasn't pulled through enough, there we go. Oh gosh, now the cat is on my laptop, potentially sending emails. I don't even know. We have a bird feeder right outside my office windows, so the cats want to be here all the time. So really this is just all my own fault for putting the feeders there. Alright, so again, very similar to the woven wheel rows. We're coming up near the center, as close to the center as we can get in this situation, right? Because we have a bunch of French knots in the way. We're just going to do the same weaving over, under, and just be real gentle and loose with that tension. Some of these wraps are going to cover parts or all of those French knots that are in the center, and that is by design. One thing you can do with these woven wheelbarrows is you can always change the color of your thread in the middle. Well, it looks kind of fun. Then you kind of have a two-toned rose. They're also fun to do with variegated thread. Oops. See, obviously, the further along you go, the harder it can be to sneak under those spokes without stabbing your weaves. Oops. So take your time. Again, like when I get far enough that it's getting really tricky to keep weaving without kind of messing with the other weaves, that's when I just go ahead and like go down and then add some stitches around the edges. Oopsies. Add some stitches around the edges if needed to cover any more of those guidelines. Something like that. All right, so I'm tired. I'm gonna pause and we will finish up the rest of these stitches in the next video.